Hi, everyone. It's Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and I am back with another Monday morning edition of Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about all things U.S. immigration. So, y'all know I like to dive right in. So, this past week, we have seen several executive orders, many of which impacted and will impact immigration, many of which will not. So, I'm going to sort of really focus in on the ones that are directly immigration related, or as I have been saying most of last week, immigration adjacent. So, if you have been watching the news, then you know that we have had some executive orders that have impacted what's been happening at the southern border and individuals coming up through our southern border. So we have executive orders that directly speak to our southern border, and those executive orders are in line with what the president said during his inauguration speech last week. So the government has now moved to stop people from entering the U.S. via our southern border and coming into the U.S. and then staying in the U.S. as their asylum applications are being processed. We are now looking at going back to prior policy where individuals were made to remain in Mexico and sort of wait their turn in line before they could enter the U.S. and apply for asylum. We have seen an executive order regarding security at our southern border. So we have seen military servicemen and women being sent to our southern border to help with that effort. We have also seen, we now have an executive order that is, really talks about immigration enforcement. And so a lot of the executive orders, sort of when you look at them sort of as a grouping of executive orders, are really focused on enforcement and security, are really kind of their stated focuses. So with increased immigration enforcement, we have already seen some immigration raids happening. If you are an employer, the thing to kind of think about when we hear about the raids is oftentimes when there is a worksite raid, you not only wind up losing employees, you also are then given an I-9 audit. You're then given paperwork that essentially starts a government I-9 audit. And so we know that in the beginning of this month, the fines for I-9 violations increased. So if you are not quite sure what's happening with your I-9s, you want to make sure that your I-9s are in order. And that is for any employer who has I-9s. We also have had an executive order regarding birthright citizenship. Again, that was not a surprise executive order. That was something that the current president has talked about for quite some time. And so that executive order essentially said that if a child was born or is born, and the mother is not a U.S. citizen, not a green card holder, and the father is not a citizen or green card holder, and if that child is born on U.S. soil in the U.S., then that child is not a U.S. citizen. It also said if the mother is not a U.S. citizen, is not a green card holder, but is here lawfully in a temporary status, so think your visitor visas, your H's, your L's, and the father is also not a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, then that child is also not a U.S. citizen. So there were lawsuits filed immediately after that particular executive order came out. And a federal judge has issued a temporary restraining order and used the phrase when describing the executive order and what it was trying to do in terms of birthright citizenship as blatantly, quote, blatantly unconstitutional. The executive order was initially supposed to be effective in 30 days, so towards late February. The temporary restraining order sort of kicks that kicks that down the line a little bit. So this is that certainly those legal challenges are not over. So we'll keep you up to date on those. We also have an executive order protecting the United States from terrorist and other national security and public safety threats. And in that executive order, there is a call for enhanced security and screening and vetting of visa applicants, whether those visa applicants are outside of the US or inside of the US. So again, we have seen during his prior administration, when we have these enhanced security and vetting and screening initiatives, it has led to longer processing times and backlogs. So if you are looking to sponsor someone, whether it's an employee, whether it's a family member, we are going to very soon start seeing longer processing times and potentially increased backlogs. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you are about to start an application. There is also an executive order regarding trade policy. So the the executive order is mandating that the affected federal agencies review all existing trade agreements. So one trade agreement that pops into mind most immediately for me anyway is the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, formerly known as NAFTA. When they are looking at that agreement, there is a very significant immigration and visa work piece of that agreement. Folks from Mexico and Canada enter the US on what we call a TN, still stands for Trade NAFTA visa. So if there are changes to that trade agreement or proposed changes to the trade agreement or new policies surrounding that trade agreement, that could in fact impact upcoming TN applicants. So just want y'all to keep that in mind. So those are some of the executive orders that I wanted to talk about this morning. We're still, we're a week in. So wanted to bring this to your attention, let you know what's going on. I will continue to do that as I have done on Monday mornings. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I know that y'all thought that I probably wouldn't, but I am, is H-1B season. We are full on in the middle of H-1B season. Now is the time, if you have not already done so, to identify anyone that you wish to enter into the H-1B lottery. Whether that is an international student, whether you have a candidate, that maybe is not working for you already. Now is really the time to identify those people and do the analysis of whether or not you think, if they are selected in the lottery, that they, that they are eligible for H-1B status, eligible to receive H-1B status. Currently, I expect it to open in March, just like it has in the past several years. I have not heard any announcements about any changes surrounding the mechanics of the H-1B lottery. I'm not saying there won't be changes. There are little tweaks every single year, but I have not heard any sort of rumblings about, massive changes to the H-1B lottery. But again, I will absolutely keep you updated. The one thing I also wanted to mention this morning about sort of dovetails into the H-1B lottery is, as of January 17th, we had a new H-1B rule that came into effect. And part of that rule extends cap-gap coverage. So cap-gap is that time, and it is specifically for international students. And it really essentially extends their student status until there is a decision made on their H-1B application. But it used to only extend it until September 30th. And then October 1, they were, there was no more cap gap, right? And October 1 is the start of the fiscal year. Now we have an extension until the application is approved or until April 1st of the following calendar year. So it's sort of April 1 is like that maximum day as opposed to September 30th. So just that's a good thing. We want to keep that in mind. I've been getting some questions about that. So I wanted y'all to know that. And then the last thing I want to talk to y'all about this morning are EB1 extraordinary ability green cards. So we know that it is a first preference green card category. And what I tell people is that you really have to show that you're just kind of the best thing since sliced bread, that you are really well known and well respected in your specific industry, and that you are pretty much at the top of your industry, right? So we can do that by showing that you've got a one-time achievement award. Think Oscar, Olympic medal, Pulitzer, like really, 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 really big, well-known awards. Or if you don't have that, because frankly, the majority of applicants, I imagine, do not have that, right? You are given a list of 10 criteria, and you have to show that you meet three of those criteria. And when I think about those 10 criteria, it's really essentially what people are saying about you in your industry. That again, the government wants to see somebody other than you saying that you are the best thing since sliced bread, right? And super important to remember about the EB1 and sort of what I wanted to kind of focus on this morning really briefly is that there's no specific industry that is better than another when it comes to an EB1 green card application. You can be part of the sciences, you can be somewhere in the arts, you can be in education, you can be somewhere in the business realm, or you can be in the athletic realm, right? So, there's no one industry, no one career path that makes you a better candidate for an extraordinary ability green card over another. Really super important when you're putting these applications together is to have documentation, right? Documentation to show that you have risen to the top of your career. And people think that, frankly, you're the best thing since sliced bread. That's how I like to describe it. So if you have any questions about EB1 extraordinary ability green cards, the most recent executive orders that have come out, or what we think will happen as a result of some of the executive orders, or you have questions about H-1B cap season, which we're in full swing, feel free to reach out to the office. We're happy to kind of walk you through that and have a conversation with you. Again, I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. Have a great rest of your Monday and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.